That right there is a holoback flashback straight to 2005, and a winning artist I seriously love. Tonight, she's marking the 20th anniversary of that AMA win, going big by performing 2 of her biggest hits plus her newest banger. So make some noise for my one and only, the one and only, Gwen Stefani. It's so exciting to be here. So good to have you. Now let's rewind a bit. It all kicked off under the bright lights of The Voice back in 2015. 2 stars from totally different worlds crossed paths at just the right moment. Gwen Stefani, the California pop icon piecing her life back together after heartbreak, met Blake Shelton, the Oklahoma country singer healing from his own very public divorce. Nobody saw it coming, but their connection was real and unforced. Gwen later admitted she didn't even know who Blake Shelton was before joining The Voice, and honestly, that confession just made fans love their story even more. On screen, the chemistry was loud and clear. 2 broken hearts finding laughs and light in each other's space. The pop queen and the country star turned into America's favorite love story. A modern fairy tale that felt way too perfect to ever fade. But you already know how this goes. Behind every bright spotlight, shadows creep in. And before long, their picture-perfect romance was about to be tested in ways nobody expected. If you've ever believed in second chances, stick around, because this is one story you don't want to miss. For a while, Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton looked like they were living inside an actual love song. Their chemistry wasn't just real, it was sellable. TV producers, magazines, music networks, everybody turned their relationship into a whole brand. Together, they became the couple people wanted to believe in. Ranch pics, duet performances, interviews where they looked inseparable. Fans called them Hollywood's most genuine pair. Proof that even in the chaos of fame, real love could still win. Blake didn't hide how much Gwen changed his life. In an NBC interview, he straight up said she kept me from going to the absolute bottom, explaining how her presence gave him purpose after one of the darkest times he'd ever faced. Gwen often said Blake saved her life after her divorce. That mutual admiration became the heartbeat of their public image. 2 people pulling each other out of heartbreak. But behind the perfectly curated posts, small cracks were starting to show. Fans noticed Gwen stopped liking some of Blake's photos. Blake skipped one of her Las Vegas shows, something he had never done before. What looked flawless on the outside was quietly fraying. Fame makes everything louder, the love, the smiles, and the tension. And for Gwen and Blake, perfection slowly turned into pressure. Those tiny cracks that started out low-key were about to become impossible to ignore. Then came the first real rift on The Voice. When the show returned for another season, Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton weren't just judges anymore, they were the soul of the show. Their jokes, chemistry, and playful back and forth pulled in ratings like crazy. Fans loved watching them flirt, tease, and hype each other up like teenagers in love. But behind the scenes, things weren't always so light. According to several production insiders, one rehearsal afternoon got tense real fast. They reportedly clashed over creative direction, and what started as a small misunderstanding turned into a heated exchange that left the studio dead quiet. Filming was paused so they could step away and cool off. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but one witness described it as uncomfortable, like 2 people who cared deeply but were speaking completely different languages. The argument wasn't about love. It was about where they were headed. Gwen, always the visionary, was focused on a bold comeback, reclaiming her pop edge and introducing herself to a whole new generation. Blake, rooted in his country soul, wanted stability and peace. He loved the rhythm of ranch life, not the chaos of reinvention. Still, when cameras started rolling again, they snapped right back into character. Smiles, jokes, harmony, the whole deal. To viewers, everything looked perfect. But behind those smiles, the emotional distance grew just a bit more. It wasn't something fans could see, but the people close to them felt the shift. Off camera, those bright smiles were slowly turning into silence. Gwen Stefani, the fashion-forward California pop icon, and Blake Shelton, the grounded Oklahoma country star, looked like a match written in music history. She thrived under flashing lights and red carpets. He found peace in open fields and long, quiet drives. Together, they seemed like proof that opposites don't just attract, they can actually build something real. But over time, those same differences became the cracks they couldn't ignore. Gwen loved motion, studio sessions, rehearsals, the non-stop buzz of Los Angeles. Blake craved stillness, his ranch, his dogs, the dirt roads that reminded him who he was before fame hit. What once balanced them started pulling them apart. Friends noticed the shift. Gwen stayed in LA more, throwing herself into music and design projects. Blake stayed home, saying he was worn out by the noise. They weren't fighting all the time. It was quieter than that. They were drifting, both exhausted from trying to merge two completely different lives. To the outside world, they still looked solid. Smiling in interviews, holding hands on red carpets, posting sweet photos. But in private, the silence grew heavier. It wasn't about falling out of love. It was about realizing love alone doesn't always bridge two opposite worlds. Then one quiet night in Oklahoma, all that unspoken tension finally snapped. Quick pause. If you're feeling this story so far, don't forget to subscribe for more real Hollywood moments behind the headlines. Blake Shelton had just finished a small run of shows, and Gwen Stefani was coming off long nights in the recording studio. The plan was simple. Meet up at the Oklahoma ranch and reconnect away from La's chaos. But what should have been calm turned into a night that changed everything. According to multiple entertainment reports, Gwen came across a message on Blake's phone from a female collaborator he'd been working with recently. It wasn't romantic, but it was personal. Friendly. Familiar. Maybe a little too close for comfort. After months of emotional distance, that message hit hard. When Gwen confronted Blake, the conversation blew up fast into an argument neither of them could escape. Neighbors later said they heard raised voices cutting through the quiet Oklahoma night, something totally out of character for a couple usually known for laughing nonstop. People close to them described it as raw and heavy. Two people who loved each other but had hit a breaking point. By morning, Blake was gone. He checked himself into a local hospital for what his team called stress-related exhaustion and dehydration. But insiders said it ran deeper. He looked drained, defeated, like someone carrying weight words couldn't cover. When news of his hospitalization broke, fans were shocked. The fairy tale couple that once symbolized second chances suddenly looked fragile and painfully human. For the first time, people started asking if the love story they believed in for years was quietly falling apart behind closed doors. As headlines spread, it was clear this wasn't just another celebrity drama. Something deeper had cracked. Then came the media frenzy and Gwen's silence. When news of Blake Shelton's hospitalization hit, the internet went wild. Social media filled with concern, confusion, and non-stop speculation. Fans tagged Gwen Stefani in thousands of posts asking the same thing, where is Gwen? For a couple known for always showing up together, her absence was impossible to ignore. Then photos appeared. Gwen was out here attending a fashion event in Los Angeles that same weekend. She looked absolutely radiant, smiling for the cameras, while her husband was reportedly recovering in Oklahoma. That contrast straight up fueled public outrage, with tabloids running wild dramatic headlines and fans turning comment sections into full-on debates over loyalty, love, and image. But people close to her said the reality was way different. Behind those smiles, Gwen was reportedly overwhelmed. She hadn't slept in days, and was basically trying to keep it together under non-stop pressure. In a recent interview, she even talked about Blake's habits, joking about his love for food and his easygoing vibe, a reminder that their differences often made them laugh and sometimes clap back at each other in playful ways. But let's be real, the internet rarely pauses for empathy. Every hour of Gwen's silence turned into another headline. Every smile became another accusation. For the first time, the couple that once symbolized joy and healing was now getting judged by the same crowd that used to celebrate them. And just when the rumors hit their loudest volume, Blake's own voice cut through the noise in a way nobody saw coming. The leaked voice memo. Days later, when public obsession was at its peak, another shockwave smashed the internet. A leaked 92-second voice memo allegedly from Blake Shelton to Gwen Stefani. It spread like wildfire across gossip pages and fan accounts, pulling in millions of plays within hours. The recording wasn't dramatic or angry. It was quiet, almost eerie. Blake's voice sounded tired, fragile, and full of heartbreak. When he reportedly said, "I don't even know how we got here. You were my peace, and now you're my pain. I'm not angry. I'm just empty. Maybe I was the one who needed saving all along." Those words hit deep. The kind of confession never meant for public ears. For years, fans saw Blake as the strong, grounded one, the guy bringing laughs into every room. But this audio showed something else entirely. Vulnerability. Confusion. Emotional burnout. The clip blew up across every platform within hours. Comment sections went crazy. Was it a breakup? A cry for help? Proof of months of tension people only guessed about. Nobody really knew. The media dissected every word, every pause, every tone, trying to decode what Blake really meant. Through all of it, Gwen said nothing. No statement. No denial. Not even a single social media post. That silence, intentional or not, became the loudest response of all. But behind that silence, Gwen was getting ready to make a quiet move that would flip everything. And nobody saw it coming. The secret hospital visit. For days, Gwen Stefani stayed completely silent while headlines screamed and fans speculated non-stop. Commentators argued every theory, but nobody knew that late one night, she made a decision. Without security or cameras, she boarded a private flight to Oklahoma. No stylists. No entourage. Just Gwen in a hoodie pulled low, driven by a deep need to see the man she had hurt. According to reports, she entered Tulsa Medical Center through a discreet side entrance, escorted by a single staff member, who kept the visit off the radar. A nurse who later spoke anonymously said Gwen was shaking but determined. When she stepped into Blake's room, time seemed to freeze. The man who once filled arenas lay pale and exhausted, the life temporarily drained from his voice. Gwen stood there for several seconds before whispering, "I never meant to hurt you." For a long moment, there were no cameras, no headlines, just two people stripped down to the truth. Finally, Blake reached across the bed and took her hand. That one simple gesture said everything words couldn't. Forgiveness wasn't far off, but healing. Yeah, that was gonna take time. Observers described the room as raw and quiet, the kind of silence that only happens when two people finally see each other for who they really are. Not celebrities, just humans who lost their way. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a pocket of peace in the middle of chaos. Still, even the softest touch couldn't undo all the damage fame and pressure had already left behind. Love alone wasn't enough to fix everything. Quick reminder before we keep going, hit subscribe and stay tuned, because the next twist in this story might actually surprise you. Control versus compromise. After that emotional hospital visit, conversations around Gwen and Blake's relationship started to shift. For years, rumors blamed jealousy or distance. But insiders started telling a different story. The real issue wasn't betrayal. It was control. Gwen Stefani built her career on precision. Her style, her sound, every detail was curated and personal. For her, perfection wasn't vanity, it was survival. But to Blake Shelton, the magic of their relationship had always been its simplicity. Two people finding peace away from the chaos. Over time, that contrast turned into friction. Friends later said Gwen encouraged Blake to evolve, to reach wider audiences, to look beyond country music's borders. She thought reinvention would keep them both relevant. To Blake, though, that hit deep. He didn't want to be reinvented. He wanted to stay real, stay rooted in who he was. Those differences slowly built invisible walls. During one emotionally charged argument, Gwen reportedly told him, "You're holding both of us back." She didn't mean to hurt him, but it did. To Blake, it felt like rejection of his core self. After that, he pulled inward, spending long days at the ranch, ghosting the spotlight. Gwen, realizing how much damage had been done, started therapy, facing how her need for control and fear of imperfection had quietly reshaped their love. It was a painful wake-up call. Fame made her a perfectionist, but it also made love harder to hold. Forgiveness was coming, but forgetting would take way longer than either of them expected. Breaking point and backlash. When news of Blake Shelton's hospitalization dropped, the reaction was instant and intense. Hashtags like Pray for Blake and Justice for Shelton flooded social media. Fans shared old clips, photos, and heartfelt messages. But as love poured in for Blake, the heat turned toward Gwen. Overnight, she became the internet's villain. Accused of neglect, coldness, ambition gone too far. Tabloids ate it up. Every outfit, every smile, every moment of silence got dragged. "Why isn't she by his side?" one headline yelled. "Queen of Pop or Queen of Ice?" asked another. Even industry insiders started whispering doubts. Behind closed doors, Gwen was unraveling. Friends said she barely slept. She deleted old photos with Blake, not out of spite, but because they hurt too much to look at. She stopped reading comments after people accused her of caring more about fame than family. Her therapist later said she was drowning in guilt, replaying every argument, every pause, every word. Blake stayed quiet, focused on healing, ignoring the noise. But his silence only fueled more speculation. To fans, the quiet from both sides said more than any interview ever could. For Gwen, it was a brutal reckoning, the moment fame stopped feeling like validation and started feeling like punishment. The same world that once adored their love now questioned her heart. And just when it seemed like their story had hit its darkest chapter, an unexpected visitor brought a glimmer of peace nobody saw coming. The pastor's visit and the first forgiveness. While Blake remained under care in Oklahoma, family stepped in quietly. But one visitor stood out, the pastor who had officiated Blake and Gwen's wedding. No cameras. No hype. Just an old friend checking in. That visit turned into one of the most meaningful conversations of Blake's life. The pastor didn't talk about fame or headlines. He talked about forgiveness. After a long pause, he asked one question: "Can you forgive her?" The room went still. Blake looked down and softly said, "I already did, but I can't forget it." Those words carried more weight than anything he'd ever said publicly. Forgiveness didn't come with an announcement. It came quietly, through exhaustion and honesty. Love was still there, even under disappointment. Insiders said that moment shifted everything, from anger to acceptance, from hurt to healing. It didn't erase the past, but it let him breathe again. Sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from serenity. Healing didn't start in front of cameras. It started in silence. Fragile rebuilding and aftermath. The days after were calm. No statements. No staged photos. No red carpet reunion. Instead, there were small, real gestures. Gwen reached out through texts and late-night calls, not to fix everything fast, but to listen. Blake responded slowly, but honestly. Their conversations were emotional, filled with apologies, memories, and quiet laughter that had been missing for months. They both started therapy separately, learning how fame, pressure, and fear shaped their choices. There was no instant fix. But there was effort. Publicly, they stayed silent, letting time do what words couldn't. No one knew if their relationship would ever fully return to what it once was. But one thing was clear: healing was happening quietly and genuinely. Their story stopped being a fairy tale and became something far more human. A reminder that even love under a spotlight can bend without breaking. Even the brightest fairy tales have shadows. And sometimes those shadows show where real love lives. If you believe every story has more than one side, subscribe for more untold journeys behind the spotlight.